Do you want a kid that's obsessed with Yu Yu Hakusho? Do you want a kid that can know as many train types as possible? Take some Tylenol. It'll be awesome. We gotta look at the autism announcement between... I cannot believe Dr. Oz is up here. Three of the most unhealthy men you have ever seen are going to tell you what causes autism. Okay, so the Cliff Notes version of this, for those of you who don't want to suffer, although you're here, why wouldn't you want to suffer? Worm brain, daytime talk show host, and reality TV star walk into a bar and tell you that Tylenol during pregnancy is what causes autism. Far be it from me to question the authority of these three grotesque homunculi, but I don't think that they are correct. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they're off base. Let's find out.
America's top medical and public health professionals as we announce historic steps to confront the crisis of autism. Horrible
autism
crisis. I want to thank the
autism
man who brought this issue to the forefront of American politics along with me.
I need you to know that Bobby Kennedy here is actually responsible for the preventable deaths of hundreds of children at this point. 83 children in American Samoa. 83 children died from measles, a disease that has taken entire civilizations to its knees, an entirely preventable disease that is combatable through vaccines, a simple action. His vaccine conspiracy theories have resulted in real lives being ruined, real tiny coffins being made. This man is an unspeakable monster.
Rise in autism is among the most alarming public health developments in history. There's never been anything like this.
Objectively false, by the way. The largest concerns you can have for public health involve things like death by heart disease, cholesterol levels, general activity levels. Autism has nothing to do with living a healthy life. It is entirely bullshit what they are saying right now.
Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. So that's not a long time. And I've always heard, they say a few, but I think it's a lot less time than that. It used to be 1 in 20,000.
The reason why autism diagnoses went up is because autism diagnoses were widened. The definition of autism was given a broader scope. It used to be a very, very small kind of diagnosis based off of the idea of public function or lack of public function. And that was how you were diagnosed with autism. Autism, as a disorder, as a bit of neurospicy, has a broader definition than it used to be, so people get diagnosed with it more. It also is a sign of the system working when you are diagnosed with a thing. To say, I don't know, bunches of people are being diagnosed with heart disease. Yeah, Americans keep having heart disease. If we diagnose more people, we can treat it more. That is all it is a sign of.
Then 1 in 10,000, and I would say that's probably 18 years ago. And now it's 1 in 31, but in some areas it's much worse than that, if you can believe it. 1 in 31.
His numbers are off too.
And I gave numbers yesterday. For boys, it's 1 in 12. I was told that's in California, where they have for some reason, a more severe problem. But whether
the reason why is because California has more medical action being taken. We got better identification and how we classify shit. Exactly.
It's 1 in 12 or 1 in 31. Can you imagine? That's down from 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000.
Again, I'm not going to repeat myself again. You get it. You get it.
And now we're at the level of 1 in 12 in some cases for boys. 1 in 31 overall. So since 2000, autism rates have surged by much more than 400%.
Autism rates.
Instead of attacking those who ask questions, everyone should be grateful for those who are trying to get the answers to this complex situation.
It's not a complex situation. It is an anomaly that shows up in people's bodies every now and again. People are just built different. You don't need to fucking fix it. We should be grateful for the guy that has spread the lies of Andrew Wakefield. We've been using the active ingredient in Tylenol for centuries. Acetaminophen is naturally found in willow bark. I know!
And the first day all of these great doctors behind me were there, I told them this is what we have to find out. Because when you go from 20,000 to 10,000, and then you go to 12, there's something artificial. They're taking something.
Oh,
and by
God.
the way, I think I can say that there are certain groups of people that don't take vaccines and don't take any pills that have no autism.
Jesus
that
Christ!
have no autism. Does that tell you something?
That is such a fucking insanely dangerous thing to say to the public. Take your vaccines! Vaccinate your fucking children! Vaccinate your children! Did you know that every autistic person drinks water? Dear God.
Something that's currently... Is that a correct statement, by the way?
No, it's not.
There are some studies that suggest that, yeah, with the Amish, for example.
No.
Yeah.
The Amish don't diagnose their kids, you dense wad of paper.
Virtually... I hear no... I hear... I
The
heard-
Amish? No, not Amish. They don't diagnose their kids. They don't. That's the thing. Amish kid, you don't think that a guy who grows up... The Amish are the most autistic motherfuckers I've ever seen. Every Amish person is autistic. What are you talking about? You look at the Amish and tell me that is an unchained autism at its max. You tell me that somebody lives like the Amish and isn't autistic.
Immediately, the FDA will be notifying physicians that the use of well, let's see how we say that. Acetaminophen.
You're being run by a toddler. Acetaminophen. Sound it out, big guy.
Acetaminophen.
Acetaminophen.
Is that okay?
There
Which
you go.
is basically commonly known as Tylenol.
Yes, Tylenol.
During pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism.
That isn't true.
So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary. That's, for instance, in cases of extremely high fever, that you feel you can't tough it out, you can't do it. I guess there's that. It's a small number of cases, I think.
Women, go ahead and be in pain while you're pregnant, or your baby will turn out to love trains and anime. I'm sorry. Do you want a kid that's obsessed with Yu Yu Hakusho? Do you want a kid that can know as many train types as possible? Take some Tylenol. It'll be awesome. Legit, what the fuck are we doing? What the fuck are we doing? This guy!
But if you can't tough it out, if you can't do it, that's what you're going to have to do. You'll take a Tylenol, but it'll be very sparingly. It can be something that's very dangerous to the woman's health. In other words, a fever that's very, very dangerous, and ideally a doctor's decision, because I think you shouldn't take it. And you shouldn't take it during the entire pregnancy. They may tell you that toward the end of the pregnancy, you shouldn't take it during the entire. And you shouldn't give the child the Tylenol every time he's born and he goes and has a shot. You shouldn't give a Tylenol to that child. All pregnant women.
This is legit just outright lies that's going to hurt people more. Like, that's what's going on here. This is just going to lead to more people dying.
Ideally, a woman won't take Tylenol.
So Tylenol responded, by the way, to this. We won't watch all of this. I won't subject you to the whole hour because there's not a lot here.
I mean, I've been so into this issue for so many years just because I couldn't understand how a thing like this could happen. And you know it's artificially induced. It's not like something that when you go from all of those, healthy babies to a point where I don't even know structurally if a country can afford it. And that's the least of the problems. To have families destroyed over this is just so terrible.
Okay. Here's the thing. All right, instead of watching more of him, I'm going to go to something, all right? Hbomber guy has a video on vaccines. It goes over all of this, the origin of this entire conspiracy theory. Do you know where the vaccine conspiracy theory comes from? Do you know where it is? It comes from the works of Andrew Wakefield. I have decided to zero in on this information, okay? This is important. Okay, we're going to get more into the whole of this, like we're going to just lube it up and shoot straight to the center of the entire Andrew Wakefield study during this video. But when you look at the conspiracy theory built around vaccines causing autism, or that autism is this deadly, terrible thing, or that it's better to have a dead kid than to have an autistic kid, which, by the way, is at the core of all of this. Bear in mind, that is what the president, RFK Jr., Andrew Wakefield, and every anti-vaxxer has at the core of their idea, all right? That it is better to have a dead child than to have an autistic child. Because to them, an autistic child lives a worse life than if it was ruined by something like measles, the mumps, or smallpox, or polio, or if they were just dead. They think autistic people are better off dead. That is the core of what RFK Jr., the president, Dr. Oz, any anti-vaxxer believes. Because what they are fundamentally willing to risk is the death of their child over an entirely imagined contraction of autism. A thing you can't even contract, by the way. You can't, catch autism. It doesn't get caused by anything. It just happens. Can't fucking believe this!
Like, seriously, the disconnect between the attempts at real science and the stuff the parents think they remember is, so jarring. Like, next to colonoscopies and biopsies and graphs of urinary excretions, you'll suddenly get sentences like,
he received a dose of measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, the day after which his mother described a striking deterioration in his behavior that she did link with the immunization.
a note from your mother isn't science, it's how you get out of PE. I'm sorry, coach, I didn't really have polio. The table claims some of the parents noticed the symptoms a few weeks, days, or even hours after getting the vaccine. But I do have to wonder how easy it is for someone to recall something as complex as the exact date of the onset of a child's behavioral symptoms. A BBC documentary from back in the day interviewed a parent, and they said on camera that their son became autistic overnight after the vaccine.
What happened to you?
That is not how autism works at all.
Before this study was released, there were a few very small clusters of parents that thought vaccines caused autism or other illnesses. JABS, the Justice, Awareness and Basic Support Group, wow, they really worked hard to make their name say JABS, had been around for a few years beforehand. Before there was a scientific paper and thousands of news pieces telling them to, there really weren't that many parents of autistic children who blamed the vaccine. According to a pro-JABS piece made in May 2002 when the scare was happening, there were thousands of members. But before all that, there were only about 30 sets of parents at best. And speaking of groups being too small to be statistically meaningful, another big problem, or to put it another way, a small problem, is sample size. Please hold your applause until the end. On its own, a study of a small sample size, like 12 children, can't prove anything about the rest of a population.
So, here's another thing about these kinds of experiments, right? Whenever, and I mean whenever, you see somebody say, some studies suggest, or this study says this, or blah, 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 9 out of 10 times, it is something like this. An extremely small, never repeated study that has very little to do with any actual science, any actual goals behind anything. Okay? Like, this means nothing. 12 people in the face of 6 billion? What? No. Favorite bit about Wakefield's bullshit is that he used to say vaccines were fine. It was just the combined MMR vaccine that was dangerous. Not that he stood to make any money or benefit out of getting the MMR vaccine getting banned. Yeah, he wanted to sell people his vaccine that he founded, that he had for his with his patent.
There's one last really weird thing about this paper we haven't mentioned yet, which most people don't seem to mention, which I find a little bit weird and indicates that no one has actually read it. Towards the end of the paper, Wakefield tries to find other papers that kind of support his findings, so he really has to scrape the bottom of the barrel.
Fudenberg noted that for 15 of 20 autistic children, the first symptoms developed within a week of vaccination.
Wow, that's a really interesting thing to... Isn't it? We should probably actually go read Fudenberg's paper and see what it has to say for itself.
Oh dear!
Fudenberg's 1996 paper cited here is from Biotherapy, a fringe journal for quacks that actually went out of business 2 years later. The paper is a pilot study on the effects of a substance called dialysable lymphocyte extract on children with autism. In addition to alleging that several of the children had become autistic within a week of getting vaccinated, are you ready for this? Fudenberg claimed that this extract he'd created could cure autism?
So, the original study, which started all of this, just all of it, like legit, down to now, where we're dealing with Tylenol warnings from the president and a worm-brained Frankenstein monster, comes from a study that is so based into bullshit, so unable to prove a damn thing about any of its beliefs, and so unable to find any form of support. It went to a fringe, tinfoil hat, insane man who claimed to cure autism. Spoiler alert, with his own blood.
Of the 22 with classic autism, 10 became normal, in that they were mainstreamed in school and clinical characteristics were fully normalized.
Became normal! Holy shit! And you want to know something funny? You want to know something funny? At the time that the study was published, Freudenberg didn't have a medical license. It was revoked the year before because he was caught stealing controlled substances from his job for personal use. The South Carolina Medical Board found him guilty of engaging in dishonorable, unethical, or unprofessional conduct. He admitted he'd done it in the hearing too. So he got caught stealing drugs, admitted it, got fired, lost all credibility, probably wasn't even allowed within 100 yards of a stethoscope, and then a year later, he cured autism. According to him. And you know he's trustworthy because he admitted to stealing all those medical supplies.
Yeah!
What I'm trying to say here is ex-Dr. Hugh Freudenberg's paper is one of the most obviously bullshit things I've ever read. And Wakefield had to cite it to create a precedent for his findings. This is the best he could get.
That is the bare minimum that is backing the idea that Tylenol causes autism. It all comes back to this study.
You can see why it's a bit weird no one brings this up, right? In scientific circles, everyone who read Wakefield's paper, or worse, bothered to check the sources it cited, had, you know, a few minor concerns. It was so concerning that The Lancet published in the same issue a response to the paper. Vaccine adverse events, causal or coincidental. It points out numerous problems, some of which we've discussed here already, and has some words to say
Silver,
about
thank you for cursing the
fear-mongering
world.
about vaccines like this.
Vaccine safety concerns, such as that reported by Wakefield and colleagues, may snowball into societal tragedies when the media and the public confuse association with causality and shun immunization. This would be tragic because passion would then conquer reason and the facts again in the UK.
This commentary would probably have seemed darkly apocalyptic at the time, but in retrospect, it was a shockingly accurate prediction. Like, they knew! They fucking warned us! So even before the paper was in the public eye, other doctors and scientists were looking at it and saying, "This ain't it, Chief."
So, in addition to that, not only has this argument been going on since the publishing of this forsaken bundle of documents, but the support for it has only ever come from the fringe and the scientifically illiterate. People like RFK Jr. are a great example of like a super spreader of this misinformation. But one of the things that has fostered this is a basically total lack of moderation on like portions of the internet where this information needs to be directly challenged. Like Facebook. Facebook is a great example of a super spreader of misinformation. And they have done little to nothing to actually combat the misinformation presented on their platform. Same thing with a lot of early YouTube. A lot of these places create an environment where like the desperate can find this and try to latch onto it like it's a life raft in a stormy ocean. They're never going to actually get help out of it, but they just want to believe that it'll somehow help them, right? These things prey on the scientifically uninformed and the desperate. The only way you stamp down on it is by creating a more scientifically informed public and by actively dismissing misinformation on these large platforms. If something is proven to be false, allowing it to consistently circulate, presenting itself as an alternative to reality, is extremely dangerous. If someone is provably wrong, you do not entertain them as though they are arguably right. We negatively reinforced autistic behavior and the children stopped behaving autistically. We have cured autism. Give us your money. Yeah.
Is that still a current reference? I've aged 10 years in the last 2 weeks. Time is meaningless. But despite a lot of obvious concerns and clear weaknesses, Wakefield published the study anyway. And then, and this is weird, he immediately held a press conference about it. This isn't something that anyone normally does in science, especially not after publishing a 5-page study that admits it didn't prove anything. The paper was so small and its findings so insignificant that it barely even qualifies as a paper. In fact, it was published in The Lancet as an early report. See, in the top left corner? Zoom in on it. It's there. You've got to be quicker on the draw than that. Holding a press conference for this is something you do if you want attention for your controversial paper, not if you're trying to do science. And here's where the whole thing really started. During the press conference, Wakefield pretended his study had discovered a risk so earth-shaking that the government should stop using the MMR vaccine and replace it with measles, mumps, and rubella vaccines given separately.
One more case of this is too many. We put children at no greater risk if we dissociate those vaccines into 3, but we may be averting the possibility of this problem.
This is the moment that changed everything. Wakefield told a room full of reporters that based on his study, he felt the MMR vaccine could be putting millions of children at risk.
This is where I'd say someone with a lot of scientific knowledge should actively step in. Like, the fact that he was able to hold a press briefing like this, based off of this bunk study, with no substantial backing, no actual discoveries, no meaningful results whatsoever, built on the torture of the children involved, and we're going to get to that later, he should have never been able to go out in public and be like, I've discovered this incredibly dangerous thing. No, you didn't. You hurt a bunch of children with invasive medical procedures, then lied about it to make money. And that was something you could catch very early on during this process. Super early on. By the way, hello, Sartanox. How you doing? Mwah. This wasn't an impossible thing to notice. This was a lack of oversight entirely. The captions, Andrew, real scientist, Wakefield, yeah.
The mainstream media were in love with the notion that the paper had found something, so they ran with it. All the way into hell.
Yep.
The paper was bad, sure, but mass movements against vaccines don't start because of the release of a paper. Like we discussed, people don't read papers. I didn't read it for like 20 years. And you know who else didn't read it? Every journalist who reported on it. But when a doctor publicly says the government is putting millions of children at risk with a vaccine rolled out nationwide, even if his paper's a load of old shit, you gotta report on that. The possibility was too tantalizing to ignore. It's really hard to get across how unavoidable the issue was. If you even glanced at a TV or a newspaper in the mid-2000s, it was MMR might cause autism, or it was Princess Diana is still dead.
Measles kills thousands of people every year. But today, questions about the vaccine.
Vaccination could be.
And you really have to ask yourself, like, if you steelman this argument, are you saying that it is worth risking your child's life, worth risking their safety for the rest of their lives, mind you? Because measles is not something that you just only catch as a child. You can catch it as an adult. You can catch it later in life. It can kill you anytime you catch it. Is it worth putting more risks on the table for your child to stay alive than it is in this fallacious and entirely untrue, entirely unproven, but in this case, selectively, like, we're going to take it seriously, risk that somebody could become autistic? This was always a profoundly selfish and incredibly ableist worry. Like, it's just a terrible thing, even in the framework that it is supposed to be real. Like, this is pretty fucking evil, right? Like, it can't... I feel like maybe I'm overstating that, but I feel like it's worth mentioning. Also, I will be right back. I need to pee very badly.
Be linked to a new side effect, a combination of bowel disease and autism.
Hundreds of articles, news pieces, and documentaries were made about the potential significance of this study. They rarely show or discuss the contents of the paper itself, but the doctor behind it came out against MMR. There's a potential link. There's a potential link, everybody! Panic! And you know what happens when every news resource is screaming about the potential risks of a vaccine? You make millions of people terrified to vaccinate their children. I was growing up during the MMR scare, and the main main thing I remember from the TV news at that time was big shots of pointy needles and children screaming as they get given an injection and ominous voiceovers saying, oh, these vaccines might be dangerous. It's almost like TV deliberately scares people for ratings because that's how this works. That's the entire point. If you want to know why thousands of parents think MMR gave their children autism, it's not because they came to that conclusion on their own. We've seen how, before all of this reporting happened, only a teeny tiny minority of parents made the connection between autism and the vaccine. They could only find 7 parents of autistic children who blamed MMR in the original study even. The only thing that changed was how many news outlets were telling everyone the vaccine might cause it. After years of the media telling them it could have been the jab, some parents started to believe it.
His symptoms started to appear when he was 2, soon after he had his MMR. This is the age at which autism usually develops, but his parents don't believe it's coincidence.
His parents didn't believe it was a coincidence because every news resource was telling them it might have something to do with the vaccine. And trusting that the media had done the work and knew what they were talking about, they believed what they were being told. The end result of publications and broadcasts like this was a lot of concerned parents, a lot of unvaccinated children, and a whole lot of new cases of measles.
With inoculation rates falling to dangerous levels.
In Ireland, the debate over MMR has been fueled still further by a measles outbreak which killed 3 children. Whatever the official evidence, which rejected a link between MMR and autism, fewer parents were prepared to take a risk.
I wonder why that might be. Could it be because every time you turned on the television there's footage of a screaming child with a needle in its arm? Once literally every other doctor had come out saying, look, there's no proof, please stop doing this, a lot of journalists got really defensive suddenly and started putting out pieces like, no, I will not stop reporting scaremongering bullshit. Wait, the same journalist wrote both of these. She just spent like 6 months of her career complaining about people criticizing her. Amazing. So, what was Andrew Wakefield doing during all this? Well, he was getting interviewed non-stop and having clips played in almost all of these news pieces. He was like a celebrity, especially to the growing list of parents newly convinced by the media's reporting that he'd discovered why their children had autism. For a couple of years, Andrew Wakefield was the sort of guy who you filmed in slow motion and black and white. Holy shit. Wakefield used his time in the spotlight to spread even more doubt about MMR and continue to repeat the recommendation.
I'm back. Sorry about that. And the most fucked up version of this shit is the choice between autism and death, and they would choose death over autism. Yeah.
That parents get separate vaccines instead. At the press conference, in interviews in the aftermath, and 4 whole times on a 23-minute videotape he sent to journalists, he claims he thinks separate vaccines would avoid the risk of autism.
Andrew Wakefield says he appealed to the chief medical officer more than 6 months ago to give worried parents the option of the single vaccine.
My recommendation has been that children should continue to be vaccinated, but to separate the vaccines, there is sufficient anxiety in my own mind over the safety, the long-term safety of the polyvalent, that is the MMR vaccination in combination, that I think that it should be suspended in favour of the single vaccines. There is sufficient anxiety in my own mind.
There is sufficient anxiety.
It would be sensible to divide them into separate doses. There is sufficient anxiety that parents must have a choice of how they protect their children.
It's really kind of interesting that while the modern anti-vaccine movement insists that all vaccines are dangerous in some way, the guy who started the fear and anxiety that led to this was pro-vaccine.
We advocate vaccination. This is not anti-vaccine in any way.
He was really specific about the fact that he thought parents should keep vaccinating, just that they should use alternatives to MMR.
The single vaccines are likely in this context to be safer.
Remember that disease he speculated about at the end of his paper? That there might be some kind of bowel disorder caused by MMR that then leads to autism? This came up in the media a lot as well.
Could the MMR jab be causing a strange new kind of bowel disease that was turning the children autistic?
Measles, mumps and rubella given together.
Could it be causing people to turn autistic? Could it? Under what circumstances could the autism be creeping into the children? Are their mushy little brains simply too victim of their colons? I hate this man.
Maybe too much for the immune system of some children to handle. There is a bowel disease, a new syndrome associated with regressive autism, and that may be related to MMR.
Eventually, he even came up with a name for it: autistic enterocolitis. Wakefield's theory, when he tries to explain it, is that the almost dead measles virus present in the MMR vaccine can get stuck in the intestine. somehow, causing all that inflammation they apparently found in the study. More on that later. Which leads to it not digesting certain foods like bread and milk properly, turning them into, his words, a morphine-like substance, which then leaks out of the bowel and into the brain.
This is just medical fan fiction, right? Like, that's what this is just medical fan fiction.
Autism is a complex condition we still don't fully understand, with many variations in symptoms and severity. But the media never mentioned that. They deliberately went looking for the most severe and extreme cases they could find, and then filmed them to exploit for television. Children who couldn't communicate verbally or had severe physical disabilities as well. The intent to make the MMR question.
I have seen people who look at autism through this lens, and it is disgusting every single time. I have seen so many people, direct people in my life, say autism is this crippling and family-destroying disorder, where they look at people who have it, who are the least likely examples of what autism looks like, who deserve the same love and care that anyone else does, and they demonize them. And it's disgusting, because they look at people who are, and I know the term is out of date here, just bear with me, like low functioning, as they would describe it, nonverbal, very like outburst driven, very hard to communicate with people who have this disorder, and they go, that's the worst way to live life ever. And it's like, dude, you are a bad person if you think that. You are actively dehumanizing somebody by saying that that's not a life worth living. And like, what is wrong with you? It's like Autism Speaks, who want to cure autism and find a world without autism. You're never going to. That's not how that works. And also, you're demonizing a type of person. It's eugenics shit, dressed up in a fancy lab coat.
As serious as possible, resulted in an almost pornographic obsession with suffering children. They went out of their way to portray autism as a horrific tragedy that it's worth risking a disease to avoid. And yeah, measles is a disease. Like, it kills people, it can cause incredibly severe complications that are with people for life. We as a society are no longer really aware of just how dangerous measles can be, because we don't see all those complications as much because of vaccinations. Measles, mumps, and rubella are legitimately dangerous and potentially life-threatening diseases, and it says a lot about how we think about neurodivergence, that it's worth risking that to avoid being autistic to some people. Wakefield planned on producing and selling diagnostic kits
Here's to 37 more months.
To test for autistic enterocolitis.
And 37 more months is like a whole year.
A private and confidential prospectus for potential investors acquired by Brian Deere claimed,
it is estimated that the initial market for the diagnostic will be litigation-driven testing of patients with AE, autistic enterocolitis, from both the UK and the
Autistic enterocolitis.
USA.
Describing the target audiences as
parent groups and lawyers representing affected individuals
and
major pharmaceutical companies.
These prospectuses also calculated how much these businesses would be worth.
It is estimated that by year 3, income from this testing could be about £3,300,000, rising to about £28 million.
Adjusting for inflation, that upper estimate is about $72 million. If you think that's bad, earlier he estimated a much larger number to the for-profit branch of the Royal Free Medical School. £72.5 million per year, almost $200 million in today's money. In an Inventor School investor meeting document that Deere obtained, Wakefield teased they could charge premium prices for the technology he intended to develop. Wakefield also became director of a third business, Unigenetics Limited, in the Irish Republic. Wakefield applied for and was successfully given a...
I'm sorry, if you named your company Unigenetics, you need to be put in a watch list. That's some umbrella shit. I recognize a shell company for an evil corporation when I see one. And Unigenetics sounds like the kind of thing that would develop a, like, bioweapon that turns everyone it infects into, like, a bloodthirsty deer monster. That's fucked up right there, okay?
£800,000, more than $2 million today, in government funding to begin developing the test. And this is all on top of how much money Wakefield would get if he managed to get the funding to manufacture his alternative vaccine. Companies like Axcan Pharma in Canada were paying to fly him out to discuss his business plans. According to Brian Deere, he was also negotiating a consultancy with Johnson & Johnson and developing connections with both Merck and SmithKline Beecham. This guy was sure he was going to be rolling in money. I wonder if this might point to a financial incentive to discredit MMR. Watching Wakefield repeatedly push for getting alternative vaccines just in case is really chilling to watch now. You have to watch him sit there and create demand for his planned future products, and no one watching knows what he's up to. They think he's a doctor just asking questions about MMR. No wonder he wasn't anti-vaccine, he wanted you to buy his. That said, there were a few roadblocks to the success of these businesses.
Phenomenal. Like, just the insane.
The first is that autistic enterocolitis is a fake disease he just made up, which means it's very hard to invent a test for it. Remember that thing I said about pilot studies? I'm sure you do. You have a good memory. I really respect that about you. They offered to continue employing him, but only if he undertook a new, much bigger study to actually explore the original study's findings properly. He was offered help with a study on 150 patients to confirm what he had only really speculated about so far with a study of 12.
Good scientific practice now demands that you and others seek to confirm or refute robustly, reliably, and above all reproducibly the possible causal relationships between MMR vaccination and autism, autistic enterocolitis, and inflammatory bowel disease that you have postulated.
Autistic enterocolitis is in quotes. They don't believe him, it's great. This would be any legitimate scientist's dream. The freedom and support to fully explore a hypothesis and discover the truth. Wakefield agreed to perform the study, but then he never actually did it. Pepys would later go on to say Wakefield was a wanker and a fraud. Eventually, in 2001, after repeatedly ignoring calls to do the study he'd agreed to do, he was told to leave. Check out this article all about... Oh, I love journalism.
Last November, Andrew Wakefield left the Royal Free Hospital by mutual agreement.
Capitalizing on his perceived reputation with the public as a man who had discovered a link between vaccines and autism, Wakefield said,
"I have been asked to go because my research results are unpopular."
This was meant to sound conspiratorial, like, they let me go because I'm making MMR look bad. But it seems like he was just unpopular with people because they could tell he was a fraud. And a wanker. At this point, Wakefield's career as far as real medicine was concerned was over, and his businesses failed to get off the ground because he no longer had any legitimacy left. What pharmaceutical company or other investor is going to give money to a doctor who just got fired for refusing to prove the thing he's trying to get funding for even exists? In 2003, Deere's investigation was in full swing and beginning to uncover all of this. He also made a really interesting discovery about something that took place during the original study. You know that whole autistic enterocolitis thing? Both his theories about MMR's danger and his new businesses making testing kits for the disease rested on being able to find the measles virus in the intestines of children with autism.
Which he couldn't do.
Measles virus present in the intestine of these children.
The BBC documentary covered this search extensively, with Wakefield saying in an interview that proving it was there would require finding the RNA of the virus in tissue samples.
The gold standard now is to find the gene of the virus in there.
The big deal here is if Wakefield can't find the gene of the virus, then his theory is wrong. In these interviews, Wakefield is trying to imply that they've only just started looking for the virus. So they haven't found it yet, but that's okay, they've only just started looking, right? This turned out to be a lie. Deere discovered that Wakefield had already looked for it, and it's not there.
So, okay, to recap where we are here. Andrew Wakefield worked on a study that did not have a meaningful amount of patients, that did not prove a connection between autism and a fake disease he made up in order to try to create this connection, did not find the fake disease he thought that he made up inside of the patients that he was testing to create this connection, and did all of this in order to sell people his patented version of a vaccine in order to make money. All the while selling the public a bunch of fear about vaccines causing autism, again based off of an entire study that literally proved nothing. Incredible.
Nick Chadwick worked on Wakefield's paper and was a specialist on methods of finding measles RNA in tissue samples. Wakefield actually helped co-author some of his work. So of course, Wakefield had Chadwick look for measles RNA in the tissue samples taken from the children in the study. These were the children Wakefield was sure must have measles somewhere in their guts, since he was blaming their autism on it. However, when he looked, he never found any measles whatsoever.
Did you find measles virus in those children?
Huh.
No single case did I find any measles virus in those children.
This means that Wakefield already knew, before he even published the paper, that measles couldn't be found in the guts of autistic children.
Dr. Wakefield's theory was that it was measles virus itself that was responsible for a bowel disease and then leading on to some kinds of autism, and you found no measles virus.
That's correct.
The final published version of the 1998 study doesn't have Dr. Chadwick.
Literally finding nothing when looking for a thing you made up and then admitting it and still soldiering on anyways is insane work.
Name on it, even though he did a lot of work for it. Chadwick later wrote in a signed declaration that he specifically asked for his name to be left off the paper because he wasn't comfortable with how Wakefield was still pushing his theory even though he'd found 0 positive tests for measles. By this point, he was already planning to launch a business selling testing kits based on this theory, so he ignored the work in his own lab that disproved him and kept saying he thought measles could cause a bowel disease that leads to autism and kept looking there for measles for years afterwards. The BBC documentary is about his hunt for the measles virus because even 4 years after launching his paper, he still hadn't found anything else to back up what he was saying. I actually have to give some credit now to this BBC documentary, even though they mostly side with Wakefield and assume he's going.
No, I know that, Haven. I've known that for a while. I was vaccinated for chickenpox. That's already, that's a thing. I got all my shots.
To find the proof soon. There is one segment where the interviewer's like, wait a second.
Shouldn't you have proved it before you said it?
As I say, proof may be 10, 15 years away in terms of definitive scientific proof.
So shouldn't you have waited?
No.
Obviously, after discovering all this, Brian Deere had even more questions for Wakefield, which Wakefield was continuing to avoid.
I've been trying now to speak with him for a year. We even wrote, but he didn't reply.
Deere eventually just went to an autism conference Wakefield was speaking at. After his presentation, Deere approached him with questions.
Dr. Wakefield, I'm sorry to interrupt. Brian Deere, Channel 4 Television.
I
want to talk to you about your research, sir, and your...
Happy Hobbit birthday for the other day. Happy Hobbit
There's
birthday!
something kind of cathartic about just how guilty Wakefield acts here. Like, he's happily hanging around after his talk, casually answering questions from concerned parents and other reporters, and then, the instant he recognizes Brian Deere, the guy he's been actively avoiding for over a year, he turns and leaves the room as fast as he can. Wakefield's only defense against his clear financial incentive to discredit MMR is to run away
I should have done a bigger thing for it. I'm sorry.
And since Deere clearly wasn't doing that, Wakefield decided to escalate. A few months after this footage of him heroically running away like a baby from Basic Inquiry was broadcast, Wacky Andy filed a defamation lawsuit against Channel 4, who produced the documentary, the Sunday Times, who published some of Deere's reporting, and, additionally, he sued Brian Deere's personal website, briandeere.com. Can you imagine being that petty? In 2004, 10 of the paper's original 13 authors came forward to publicly
I still should have known. I still should have known, Cuttlefish. I wish my mom hard on getting her shingles vaccine and to find a way to get mine if I'm not old enough. You should get it. You should get it.
Tracked the interpretation section of the paper. Half a decade after its publication, a vast majority of the people who worked with Wakefield on his paper have gone on record to say they think his conclusions are bollocks. At this point, Wakefield's study's coffin has fallen through the floor from the sheer weight of all the nails that have been hammered in it. So, that's the foundational study of the anti-vaccine movement. A hack frauds bullshit paper claiming that a handful of parents know better than all doctors, so he could sell an alternative competing vaccine that he'd patented, which he thought he was going to make millions selling. The evidence against the movement can't get much worse than that, can it? That was a joke.
It very much can.
Part 5, it gets much worse! Brian Deere didn't stop there. Wakefield was trying to sue him to get him to stop digging. And guess what? One of the first rules of investigative reporting is that if they try and sue you for finding things out, you're probably onto something.
I mean, he brought me into the story by virtue...
I really think a lot of modern reporters need to follow this, especially when it comes to, like, what's going on in Israel, right? Like, okay, look at the modern landscape of things. The Trump administration, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel, all of these people that are in positions of power consistently throw out lawsuits and fight very, very hard to get people to not talk about them and not expose what they are doing. And that is fertile ground for real journalism. Every single person should have their ear to the door every time someone says, oh, we're going to sue you if you report on this. Report on it, baby!
The fact that years ago he sued me.
He discovered that 2 years before the paper was published, Wakefield had been hired by a lawyer to conduct the study. The lawyer, Richard Barr, had realized there was potentially millions and millions of pounds in bringing a class action lawsuit against MMR manufacturers on behalf of parents of autistic children. But since there was no actual evidence the vaccine did this, he paid Wakefield to find some. Wakefield charged Barr £150 an hour for the time he spent working on the study, eventually totaling over £435,000. In today's money, that's more than $1.1 million. This was more than 8 times his yearly salary at his job at the hospital. 6 months before The Lancet published the study, Barr sent Wakefield a letter saying, and I quote, actually I got Sean to say it,
I have mentioned to you before that the prime objective is to produce unassailable evidence in court so as to convince a court that these vaccines are dangerous.
Oh, okay. This whole thing was bullshit, wasn't it? And hey, remember Jabs?
Incredible.
Jabs was involved with the lawsuit, and it turned out their members helped to recruit many of the parents to the study in the first place. I swear to God, this isn't one of the joke logos we made. This is...
I gotta play GTA 6. I ain't getting Rapture before that shit comes out.
Actually, the header on their Facebook page, this low-resolution, shitty nightmare. Jackie Fletcher, the founder of Jabs, was also a litigant
at the very minimum, I need to see it. I don't know if I'm going to play it, but I need to see it.
in the lawsuit. They needed her connections to the dozen or so other parents who actually blamed MMR to be able to do all of this. Some of the parents were even involved with the lawsuit too. It's kind of clever if you think about it. A couple of parents blamed vaccines for their child's autism and wanted to sue its manufacturer, but there was no evidence it wasn't just a coincidence, so they told their opinions to a doctor their lawyer had hired, who would then report those opinions in a paper. And now in court you can say there's scientific evidence implying a link between vaccines and autism, even though the link is just those opinions from before. There's probably a word for this trick. Idea laundering? I don't know. Not all of the parents knew the study was being done to help a lawsuit, but they were all chosen deliberately. However, like we explored earlier, not many parents in 1996 blamed...
For the record, I want to say something about this. The idea laundering thing, this is a thing that America has done multiple times. The link between smoking and cancer has had this experience multiple times. It is well known now that smoking causes cancer. We know that. That is a very obvious thing. But tobacco companies have spent millions, billions of dollars on trying to find a study that says that it doesn't happen. Because that's what they need. So by creating a falsified study that is very, very specific and only gives them information that they want, they could say, well, there is scientific evidence to say that smoking doesn't cause cancer. Even though, yeah, it does. It's called fraud? Yep.
I don't know. Not all of the parents knew the study was being done to help a lawsuit, but they were all chosen deliberately. However, like we explored earlier, not many parents in 1996 blamed vaccines for autism, so they had to cast a wide net to even find the couple of parents they did. Child 11 wasn't even from England. He was from California. If a contact of Jabs or Richard Barr thought you might suspect vaccines made your child autistic, you and your child were being flown around the world to take part in this study. And even then, some of the parents still turned out not to blame the vaccine. I cannot stress enough what a fucking shambles this paper was. Most of the other doctors working on the study had no idea the guy running it had been paid hundreds of thousands of pounds to discredit MMR. According to Chadwick's later testimony, Wakefield worked separately with each individual scientist working on the study, instead of bringing them all together, which would have been the normal thing to do. This afforded Wakefield a good level of secrecy about his motives. The other scientists must have largely thought they really were looking into a connection between autism and bowel disorders in children. So even the doctors and scientists involved were being lied to and tricked into lending their time and effort to a study being done to help a lawsuit make some lawyers a lot of money. Once all of this came out, Wakefield was, medically speaking, fucked. While he'd been asked to leave his post years earlier, he still had a license to practice medicine in the UK. But amidst all of these discoveries, the General Medical Council began a fitness to practice hearing against Wakefield, going through the records of the study to evaluate whether his behaviour had been ethical.
The row he started dominated the headlines. Now his conduct, not his views, will be making the news.
This hearing would go on to last for 217 days, making it the longest in General Medical Council history, and longer than the O.J. Simpson trial. This is Wakefield's only legitimate achievement. He made such a fucking mess, it took that long to pick through it all. Meanwhile, remember when Wakefield sued Brian Deere? This would turn out to be the worst mistake he ever made in his life. Because
if you've ever wondered why Donald Trump will not sue anybody who says something like, Donald Trump is absolutely in the Epstein files and collaborated with Jeffrey Epstein multiple times in order to rape children that he decided to profit off of by sexually trafficking them to other pedophiles around the globe or to people here in America. And he has been knowingly an accomplice to Jeffrey Epstein for the majority of his adult life since they met. And there is active proof of it being suppressed by his administration. The reason why I will not be sued by Donald Trump because of that is because that would require submitting what I have claimed into evidence for both of us. You see, if he were to sue me for saying that he is in the Epstein files would need to be given to discovery, meaning they would be a matter of public record, meaning they would have to be publicly discussed. He has not sued anyone for claiming that he is in the Epstein files because it would require them to be put into discovery. I'm onto something? You're damn right. Thank you, SEAL Chief. That's legitimately one of the reasons. That's why all the claims that get made all the time, none of this gets attacked at all. Like, obviously, if he were to sue me, I'd be entirely crushed, right? I have none of the finances to handle a lawsuit. However, I ain't gonna lie, I'm kind of willing to take the bullet for that one.
During a study, that meant that the records of what happened in the study were evidence in the case now. I mean, how else were they going to prove it was libel or not? The judge agreed that Deere had to be granted access to the confidential, unredacted medical records of the children from the study.
Also, Deadlock is kind of out. I have a chance to play it.
Trying to sue a journalist into shutting up, Wakefield had accidentally given him permission to see everything. Deere recalls being sat in a room with his lawyer, reading the medical records of the children and other records of what happened in the study, while Wakefield's legal team were rushing to get a cab to take them to the courthouse so they could drop the suit and stop him reading it as fast as they could. Deere got home that night to a call from his lawyer saying the case. New firmware available. Thanks, Windows.
That fucked me up so bad right there. I was panicking. I thought my stream collapsed. How dare you? How dare you, Bomberman, you sick fuck? Why?
To a call from his lawyer telling him the case was over. And as a fun bonus, because of how lawsuits work in the UK, Wakefield had to pay Deere's legal costs. The check for which Deere keeps proudly displayed on his website. But Deere
That is so awesome.
Wasn't done yet. Wakefield had just dropped a lawsuit to stop him finding
I have not heard about that, Lycan. That is terrifying. What?
things out.
But in the context of that lawsuit, a great deal of information was disclosed to me by Wakefield's lawyers, and it was quite clear I had to continue.
Deere continued his research and also attended many of the GMC's hearings about Wakefield's conduct, which discussed many of the same records he just dropped a lawsuit to hide. And based on all of this, he put the pieces together and figured out exactly what happened during the study. The result of his work is an absolutely incredible series of articles first published in the British Medical Journal. There's another
I'm going to find and shake Harris Jebediah Bomber Guy. I'm going to find him, pick him up, and shake him. Like a can of pop. I'm going to do it. You ever heard the Homeland? By the way, that Homeland Security made a music video with the Pokemon theme song. I am disgusted. What are we even doing? And Nintendo should be mad. I'm not normally on the side of Nintendo, but I hope that they win whatever lawsuit they're cooking up for this in this case.
Fucking firmware. Why is there so much firmware? Dia figured out who some of the previously anonymous parents of the children in the study were and showed some of them what the study said about their children, and it turned out the paper was lying. For example, he showed the medical records to the father of child 11.
And he looked at the paper and he just looked at what it said about his own child and he said, that's not true.
Oh.
And that was one of the parents of one of these children in the paper.
In a correspondence with Dia, he literally wrote,
The Lancet article indicates that autistic symptoms started at 15 months, a week after the MMR, which is completely inaccurate. My son's autistic behavior started 2.5 to 3 months after the MMR, which was administered to him at 15 months. The bottom line is, if my son is indeed patient 11, then the Lancet article made a false assertion that his symptoms set in immediately after the MMR, in service of some attorney's efforts to prove causation that, unbeknownst to me, apparently drove this research.
He told Dia Wakefield had said his son was the 13th child they'd looked at and wasn't included in the paper, and that's why none of the information in the study seemed to describe his son. According to Brian Dia, Wakefield had rewritten his son's medical history and lied to him to cover it up. And this wasn't the only parent who had their story changed by Wakefield. You see, for the study to be useful in Barr's lawsuit, they needed to establish a temporal link with the vaccine. Since this is the age autism usually develops, they needed it to be within 14 days, and if possible even closer. I mean, otherwise it might seem like it was just a coincidence. Which it is, but like child 11...
Which it is, yes!
The onset of autism wasn't convenient enough in almost any of the other children. The table suggests that 8 of the 12 children's parents claimed the symptoms happened within 14 days. But according to Brian Deer's reporting from the medical council hearings, many of the parents never said this, and most of the children's medical records put their symptoms starting way after this time period, with some of them showing symptoms of what could have been autism before they were vaccinated. Almost every child's autistic symptoms either started way too late to be useful in the lawsuit or way too soon. Wakefield just lied and changed the times and allegations of the parents around until the paper said what he needed it to say. This is the thing that makes so much of what he said during the scare really
So, just, again, temperature check for everything. A fraudulent study created by people looking for a class action lawsuit to make money while also trying to alley-oop that into selling a patented version of a vaccine that would avoid any form of this lawsuit in the future, was put together in order to create a connection between autism and vaccines. There isn't any. And then that caused a international panic leading to the deaths of children, and now to the idea that Tylenol causes pregnant women to give their babies autism. When does a comet become a meteor? When does a candle become a blaze? When does a man become Andrew Wakefield? What the dick, dude?
The conclusion of the inquiry is protested by Wakefield's remaining supporters.
We're with Wakefield! We're with Wakefield!
While a news crew attempts to interview one of his critics, one of his supporters attempts to shout him down and make sure he can't say anything, while another off-screen holds up a book insisting it is they who are being silenced. The irony is, apparently, lost on them. Wakefield appeared before his flock to say this was all completely unjust.
And I invite anyone to examine the contents of these proceedings and come to their own conclusions.
I think we just did. Buddy. Wakefield did lose a lot of his popularity when the extent of his abuse and fraud was made known, but he still had a few dedicated fans. Often the parents of autistic children who'd followed him so far that they refused to accept what he did. To Wakefield, these desperate people are the perfect market. I suspect the main reason he turned up in the last few days of his hearing was to advertise the book he'd written all about it on national TV. The book alleges that the medical council hearings are just trying to crush him to protect vaccines. He titled the book Callous Disregard after one of the council's comments about him. It's trying to be an ironic reference, like he's accusing mainstream medicine of callously disregarding the victims of MMR, but I don't think he considered the implications of quoting a doctor pointing out he abused children on the cover of a book with a big picture of his face on it. It's a real if I did it situation. Also in the dedication, he thanks his long-suffering wife, who's with him here on the cover. She's not his wife anymore, though. I guess she suffered enough and likes...
They did divorce. Now Andrew Wakefield is a miserable, lonely man. I'm kidding. He makes a shitload of money doing this exact grift in America.
Separate vaccines before it. Wakefield made sure to recommend his book in every interview he got.
These numbers, the dates were all fabricated to sort of make a case.
Dr. Gupta, please, I urge you, go and read my book. You will understand it. Many people don't.
It's very funny watching him try to sell his merchandise now that everyone knows he's a fraud.
If you read my book, you will be able to read the truth. And has the BMJ read my book? Have the doctors who apparently looked at all the records read my book? No, because the truth is in that book.
Well, sir, I've read Brian Deere's report, which is incredibly extensive. Sir, I'm not here to let you pitch your book. I'm here to have you answer questions.
If you read the record that I have set out in the book, you will see the truth.
But sir, if you're lying, then your book is also a lie.
Wakefield's defense...
If you read the book that I put together where I investigated myself, you will find that I did nothing wrong.
Against Brian Deere's allegations, now that suing him to shut him up has failed disastrously, is to say Deere is a hitman paid by vaccine manufacturers to ruin his career.
He is a hitman. He's been brought in to take me down because they are very, very concerned about the adverse reactions to vaccines that are occurring in children.
Wait a minute, sir. Let me just stop you right there. You say he's a hitman and he's been brought in by they. Who is they? Who is he a hitman for? This is an independent journalist who's won many awards.
Yeah, he's, you know, who brought this man in? Who is paying this man? I don't know.
Who is behind Brian Deere's reporting? Follow the money. Also, buy my book, please.
Wakefield went on to claim later in the interview that you're being paid by the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industries, are you?
No, I'm not.
In 2011, New York Times Magazine staff writer Susan Dominus caught up with Wakefield. Though Wakefield presents himself to her as someone whose career was destroyed for going against the dogma that vaccines are safe, Dominus is careful to point out that he does this while signing copies of his book for an enormous line of loyal followers, one of whom is a tearful mother who blames herself for not preventing her child's autism. At the time the article was written, Wakefield lived in a beautiful house in a reclusive and expensive neighborhood in Austin, Texas, surrounded by many acres of hills and forest.
You can almost believe you're in Tuscany,
he says of the view from his back deck.
Brian, why?
A decent amount of money, as have his many paid speaking engagements at anti-vaccine conferences, where he's lauded as the celebrity who got the movement started. There's the hundreds of thousands of pounds he got paid to do the study, of course, and the multiple documentaries about him and his life can't have been too shabby for him. It's genuinely shocking how obviously he's just grifting anti-vaccine people for as much money as he can. His 2016 film, Vaxxed, is available at a discount on his website if you buy it in a pack of 10.
We are still seeing this consistently happen. Because Andrew Wakefield's not gone. In fact, now disgraced doctor Andrew Wakefield targets mumps vaccine with new Hollywood feature film which claims dangerous jab causes serious long-term health issues. From February 14th, 2024. Last year. And he is releasing a new film. A brand new film. This man who abused children in order to profit is now profiting off of his infamy for being a child abuser. Hello, Raven, how you be?
N. Give a copy to your local legislators, educators, and medical professionals. Wakefield wants his followers to pay him to do advertising for him. When I look back at footage of the last day of Wakefield's hearing, I'm inevitably looking back at myself 10 years ago when I saw the same footage live on TV. At the time, I saw these people as Wakefield's defenders, but in a way, they were also his victims. For a decade now, since I was a teenager, I've been thinking about this woman with the sign saying, "Don't stifle uncomfortable science." I remember I first noticed her because I saw her and thought, wait, is she wearing a Playboy scarf? Surely the most uncomfortable thing for these people here must be the possibility the man they're here to defend has lied to them for money. For someone who'd sided with Wakefield during the scare, accepting that he had lied would mean taking on some of the guilt for helping to spread it. One of the worst things about Wakefield's actions is he's made these people complicit. Maybe Wakefield actually cares about these people, maybe not. But either way, Their money
doesn't.
spends just the same.
He
I
really
wonder how
doesn't.
many of these people bought his books or his documentaries. I wonder if any of them stop and think about how they've made him rich. Some of these people are extremely vulnerable, parents of children with disabilities, some of which require full-time care, who fell for Wakefield because he was offering them an explanation for why these things happen. It brings me no joy to tell you, they paid for this view.
We're with Wakefield. We're with Wakefield. We're with Wakefield. We're with Wakefield.
The people that were a part of this movement, people that are still now part of this movement, have led to an increase in childhood mortality. We are seeing deaths from measles in America as a direct result of Wakefield's work, of Wakefield's lies. Emboldened now by RFK Jr., who is actively champion of Wakefield's lies. CEO of Anarchy, that's me!
There's probably a lot of people you could blame for anti-vaccine beliefs getting as far as they have. The anxieties people have right now didn't come from nowhere. Wakefield's legacy is built into the very DNA of modern vaccine hesitancy. Or the RNA, am I right? Nice one, Kat. It's very clever. Whenever you try to trace a trend of skepticism about vaccines far enough, it almost always leads back to the fear and anxiety that started in 1998 and the men behind it. Take, for example, Bill Maher. Maher is a proponent of the possible link between vaccines and autism, and frequently has anti-vaccine activists on his show.
I don't like Bill Maher very much.
Granted, he also has people on who think that's ridiculous, so that's kind of like being fair and balanced. His general stance is that vaccines can be good, but he doesn't really go for them because he's got a better idea.
I am not a germ theory denier. I understand that germs and viruses cause diseases. I may have been a little cocky about it because I discovered...
I hate this man so much. Bill Maher is one of those people I just want to stop forever. Just stop. Just fucking stop, please. So I watched a piece of media I saw on a tattoo that translates into English. Let them try and take the dances I've danced. That's awesome. How are you really? I don't like Bill Maher. He's a smarmy, slimy little fuck. He's a coward and a piece of shit. This is a dog water, centrist nightmare man who is everything wrong with modern media. Bill Maher is everything wrong with the world, wrapped up into one greasy little fuck. Okay, I need this. Hold on. I need this. Good night, Lycan. Mwah. I need this. Come on,
I
Piper.
think today's audience watches wrestling, and they are in on the joke. That's not an insult.
It is an
What
insult.
you're trying to say is people are just dying for this.
I take it as an insult, too.
I do, too.
I mean,
but they're
so-
dying to find out, hey, wrestling's
then
fake.
you're
The only
telling
thing
me
that's
that you're
fake
really
is...
hitting each other?
No.
The sound of the chair is real, okay? We are entertainment, but when a metal chair cracks your back, that's not fake.
You know
When
what? Can't
somebody
be a
throws
metal
you from... It's a
Yes,
metal...
yes.
You know what? I'm
There's
so
never a
s-
bruise on any of you.
Baloney,
How
you got
about
a
there-
minute? Look at this. No.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go!
Metal hip.
Metal hip. Broken wrist.
Broken wrist. See that wrist? 7 years it's been broken. Owen Hart, dead. Why don't you go tell Mrs. Hart what a joke it is, huh? Oh, it's just a phrase, right? You want me to be truthful with you? Huh, champ? If I may say so, sir, the difference is...
What?
He's going to strike.
Oh, yes.
No.
Just don't show me your ass again.
Listen, I ain't backstage, man.
Yep.
Yeah. Well,
You know,
and I'm not dropping my pants in front of other men, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, how'd you get the job?
Well, how'd you get the job? Oh, it's so good. Oh, Roddy Piper, you absolute fucking beam of sunshine. You absolute champion. I hate Bill Maher because Bill Maher is awful. Also, and I want to say something here. Wrestling is not fake. It is not fake. It is a stunt performance. Wrestling is a sport. Wrestling is a real sport. It takes a serious physical toll on the performers. The insistence that wrestling is entirely fake is a hangover from like the 90s. Wrestling is real when it comes to the performances you see on stage, and the line between the story and reality is often deeply blurred. Kayfabe is informed by the real world and the fictitious world.
If your child dies of measles, it's because he didn't eat his vegetables. Bubonic plague? Skip a trip to McDonald's, sheeple. Throughout the years, Bill has repeated over and over his distrust of vaccines and the possible side effects they might pose. I've tried to find an example of him citing a source or giving some kind of data, but no, it's always this general sense that people think something might be wrong.
There's all these parents who say, I had a normal child, got the vaccine. This story keeps coming over.
Lots of parents are saying stuff, and that's basically evidence. And of course, there's the old standout, lots of people feel like me.
I was attacked for saying we should look into this, and I don't believe in it, and lots of people feel the same way.
I've heard a lot of stuff about feelings being more important than facts, so this is basically science, right?
Bill, you having us on the show and rehashing all these problems you got yourself into on your last show, it's like going on a date and talking about your ex-wife.
Oh!
If an intellectual titan like Bill Maher thinks vaccines might be dangerous, he must believe it for a good reason. I did a lot of digging on this, and I found a time when he made a concrete scientific claim about vaccines. In 2005, he was interviewed on Larry King Live. This isn't footage of that interview, I couldn't find footage of this one, but there is a transcript on the CNN website. During this interview, they discussed the flu shot, which King had been taking for 25 years. Maher tells him the best defense against disease is to have a strong immune system. I guess that's where the proper nutrition comes in, and says that the flu shot is actually bad for your...
So, I hate people like Bill Maher so much. Like, there's nothing substantive here. It's just a fundamental misunderstanding of how the thing works. Like, fundamentally not understanding how the thing works. Like, in the bones of the thing, being professionally wrong.
immune system.
I'm
He
back.
cites a strong distrust of what he calls Western medicine, which is a bit of a Eurocentric misnomer. A lot of non-Western countries develop vaccines and other modern medicine, you know? Whatever, he doesn't care. The conversation then turns...
Also, the thing, like, I don't trust Western medicine. You know that variolation, the foundation of modern vaccination, comes from the East, right, Bill? That's where it came from. The original versions of variolation, the idea that you are able to cut somebody open, variolation, as it was initially used, in America at least, was the idea that you take scabs from somebody who had smallpox. You take a needle. You cut somebody open with the tip of the needle. You take as much scab residue as will fit on the tip of the needle. You put it inside of that cut, and then you sew it back up. And what that does is infect somebody with an already battled version of the smallpox virus. You know, like a vaccine. That inoculates somebody against smallpox. That's what variolation did. That is the early version of vaccines. After that, it was developed into a different, more powerful version of the same thing that saved people without having to risk their lives. This is good. Variolation was only risky because the person at the time, you know, in the 1700s, was kind of malnourished and in shitty environments. So they didn't have a lot for the stuff that they were dealing with at the time regardless. It doesn't make your immune system weaker, it makes your immune system stronger. The current vaccines are more effective. They teach your body how to fight a virus. That's the point. Inoculation was something that was done by people in ancient China. Yeah. As much as I lament the death of the public intellectual, I often forget how many were smarmy little pricks like this. Yeah. In 2023... on July 1st, 2022, the USA witnessed the first case of polio after 3 decades of its eradication. Polio is a crippling disease that results from infection with any one of 3 related polio types, referred to as P1, P2, and P3, members of the enterovirus, piconavirius family. The New York State Department of Health confirmed the case of polio was reported from a 20-year-old Hungarian traveler residing in Rockland County. This is here because of anti-vaxxers. That's it. That's why this happened. That's why polio exists in America again. That's why there are children that are dying of measles. That's why these diseases continue to get out of hand. Smallpox and polio are not waterborne diseases. No, I know. He doesn't care. Bill Maher is not even bright enough to make that connection. Cuttlefish, I think you are actually doing the work for him here by creating a connection between the idea of waterborne diseases and non-waterborne diseases. Of course, you're pointing out that he's wrong, but I don't think Maher was even thinking of waterborne diseases when he mentioned toilets. I think he was just picking something because he was cornered. Because that's what Maher does, right? Like, I actually think we just saw Cuttlefish in a single sentence extrapolate on any argument that Bill Maher could have made about this point and then defeat it in like less than 10 words. That is how flimsy Bill Maher's arguments hold up. That's how flimsy anti-vaxxer arguments hold up. They are fundamentally inaccurate. They're wrong.
I think Bill really does a good job of summing up a lot of people's beliefs about vaccination here. Maher thinks it's smart to be skeptical about vaccines, right up until there's consequences for himself, of course, but his explanations are all unfounded and unscientific. The best he can say is there's probably books out there that prove he's right, maybe, but he's not read them. This isn't skepticism. This is ignorance trying to sound like skepticism. To bring it all full circle, it seems like Bill's beliefs about vaccines are really based on that big scare that started in the late 90s. After all, the only factoid he seems to ever be able to remember is that lots of parents said they were bad that one time. And that's not even a fact, that's some opinions he remembers. I'd joke that it's a pity they don't make a vaccine for confirmation bias, but he wouldn't have got it, would he? There is, however, one time in this old interview where he really does attempt to make a scientific claim. He tells Larry that if you get the flu shot more than 5 years in a row, it tenfold increases the risk of getting Alzheimer's. That's a really specific thing to say.
What?
Maybe by checking this claim out, we can figure out who he's getting his beliefs from.
What?
I looked, and there are actually studies on the impact of vaccination on rates of Alzheimer's. The risk of Alzheimer's goes down. Okay, so this clearly isn't his source. I did some more digging though, and I found that in 1997, at a vaccine conference, in one guy's presentation, he said that a scientist had found that this happens. There's no study cited here, but that's at least a source for Bill's claims. Let's check the doctor's papers and see if we can find out for ourselves. Wait a second, I blurred the scientist's name out by accident.
Oh,
Let
no!
me fix that. Dr. Hugh Fudenberg.
No!
No matter how you look at it, a vast majority of anti-vaccine rhetoric and pseudoscience can be traced directly back to these two guys. According to a survey of US healthcare professionals in 2016, 77% of parents refusing vaccination for their children still cite a fear of a link with autism. When people refuse medicine for their children, they largely point to the hazy memory of the scare Wakefield started for money. So yeah, it's pretty important to point out they both lost their medical licenses and their science was garbage. And
I cannot quantify the amount of dead people under Fudenberg and Wakefield's belts. Like, this is objectively turbo evil. Throughout the course of their careers, such as they are, they've gotten a bunch of people killed by spreading so much fear about vaccines, so much anxiety about what they could do to you. They have changed people's entire lives around being terrified of getting help that was readily available. In some cases, entirely free. A wholly preventable series of deaths.